My name is Daniel Henderson. I'm a senior software engineer at Amazon with the Seller Pricing Group. Been there a long time. I've owned the pricing APIs and automate pricing tool that we offer for pretty much the whole time that I've been here. I'm joined today by a couple of panelists. I've got Aaron Cohen. He's the founder and CTO of Informed Repricer. They're a third-party repricing integrator. They offer pretty much solely pricing capabilities. That's their bread and butter. And he'll talk more about how that works in just a minute. I've also got Shauna Pannone. She's the director of pre-sales engineering at Channel Engine. They're another third-party integrator that offers a wide variety of different tools and features related to all parts of the selling journey. Pricing, but also listing management, inventory management, cross-channel stuff, and I'll have her talk more about that in a moment too. But I just wanted to get started by talking a little bit about the importance of pricing automation. Pricing automation tools can really enhance your Amazon selling strategy by improving efficiency, competitiveness, sales growth. Competitiveness especially is one of the most important things when it comes to pricing, especially on Amazon. We're super focused on competitiveness here. These tools are accessible and beneficial for sellers at all levels of experience and size of business, whether you're just starting out, you made a seller account last week and you have like 4 items that you want to sell, or from the largest sellers selling millions and millions of books or whatever in their catalog. Pricing automation tools are incredibly beneficial for, spanning the whole gamut of different seller cohorts and all the different use cases that a seller might have with respect to pricing. It's really becoming increasingly critical for Amazon sellers to use pricing automation due to things like intensifying competition, economic pressures. I'm sure I don't have to talk about that. And the rapid evolution of the Amazon store. The store has changed so much over the years, it's hard to keep up, as well as the broader online retail marketplace. As more and more sellers adopt these tools, the ones who don't sort of risk falling behind, potentially missing out on sales or profit opportunities. So by implementing pricing automation, that's a great way for sellers to stay competitive, optimize operations, and really free up valuable time that you should be spending on the things where your differentiated efforts make more impact. Things like strategic growth initiatives and all that kind of stuff. So let's dive into it. I want to talk about like 4 different topics. We'll see if we get through them all. Firstly, like the evolution of pricing on Amazon. Years ago, everything was kind of manual. Over the years, many different types of pricing automation have kind of popped up. So let's talk about kind of those challenges and move on into all the different, or not all the different, but several of the different options that we have for automating pricing on Amazon. And then some real-world implementation like tips, tricks, strategies for success, and pitfalls to avoid. And then finally, perhaps most interestingly, how to future-proof your business. As things change at Amazon, how to be prepared for the future and optimize your pricing strategy going forward. So yeah, let's dive into it. The first question I have, and I'll direct this to you first, Shauna, is what major challenges are sellers facing today when they rely solely on manual pricing?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the first thing that comes to my mind is a case study we recently did with a client that came to us with that exact issue. A client called EQOM, also known as Easy Toys. They came to us because they were manually adjusting their pricing, and it created a lot of time-consuming issues for them. So that was number one. The second issue was that it was prone to human errors.
Yeah.
So they basically had to hire someone to sit there with the data entry and calculations, and it was quite challenging. It also resulted in very unclear profit margins for them. It was difficult for them to account for things like marketplace fees, sales tax, shipping costs as well. So I would say that the most difficult part of it is profitability and staying competitive.
How about Aaron? What would you say to
Yeah,
that?
I mean, those are all very, very real things that we see as well. Something that I hear a lot from sellers when they come to us is, we have a small catalog. We only have a few items. Pricing doesn't change that much. Why do I need a repricer? And this is true for everybody, even large catalogs or very frequently changing pricing, which is that just the entire landscape of selling on Amazon has really gotten dramatically more complex. And repricers these days are no longer just handling competitive repricing. There's all these inputs that go into your pricing, like fees, like delisting margin thresholds, like business pricing, that are very complex to stay on top of. There's real-time data, like even something if you're selling internationally, having exchange rates right so that you're not losing money or being uncompetitive. All of these things feed into your pricing strategy, and there's no way to do that manually. So anybody who's not using a repricer these days is really relying on figuring out all of those things themselves. Every single program that Amazon rolls out, every single new marketplace, you've got to go and figure out all that complexity, all the intricacies, every last little thing, every last little input. What we do as a tool is make sure that we're ahead of that we're figuring that out, that we're ahead of the curve so that you can just focus on running your business.
Yeah. I mean, it brings to mind also, like, beyond just competing on an item, like an ASIN or something. Like, everybody's competing, many people may be competing for the same, the featured offer placement or whatever on one ASIN. But beyond that, like, if there's 50 people selling a similar product or whatever, how do you stay competitive in that landscape as well? Like, right? Like, if that's kind of been one of the evolutions of the marketplace, of the store as well, is like there's now lots of different items all kind of competing for the same search results or glance views or whatever. How do you, even if you're doing well on your particular item, how do you do better against other similar items too? I don't know if you guys have dealt with that at all in your space.
Yeah, that's a major goal of kind of subtle, complex strategies, right? This is a common mistake actually that new sellers make, is they'll try to get really aggressive and try to dominate the buy box 100% of the time and get every single sale. That doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. And so everything's about targeting balanced revenue and not eroding profit margins, looking at long-term sustainable profit. And there's all kinds of strategies depending on what you're selling. It's gonna be a lot of variation, obviously.
Yeah.
But that is a lot of the purpose of what the tools do, is to figure out all these strategies beforehand, figure out the pricing science, figure out whether it's just game theory or just algorithms, to give you that tool. So again, you don't have to spend 20 years developing it yourself.
Yeah. I guess, are there any interesting kind of evolutions of how pricing works at Amazon that you guys have observed over the years that are worth calling out here, that kind of require or necessitate having some automation in place to adapt to them? I don't know.
I'd say just really taking a look at the buy box reports, that's the analytics, and really reviewing that and determining what makes the most sense is going to be key to show you the opportunities for growth along those.
Yeah, I mean the buy box. Well, okay, featured offer as I'm supposed to call it. The featured offer has changed. Like, I deal with this like every day, more or less. The way that works has changed so drastically over the last, 8 years that I've been here. Like, I imagine that leads to tons of complexity with, there's regional featured offers. There's featured offer in one location might be different than in another location, and that can change rapidly all the time. Like, is that, how do you kind of think about that and work that into your mental model of how to handle automated pricing?
Yeah, regional buy boxes is a really big one that's changed the game in a way, because you might be competing with somebody only in one place, and you have to know that, and you have to know where. And you might still have the national buy box and just treat them as competition and drop your price it's not going to end well. So there's, again, right, this still all comes back to you need tools where somebody's already thought about that and is doing that in real time, because you're not going to be sitting there refreshing the page or looking at API data in real time to do all that work. The other really big change that I would bring up is featured offer disqualification, which now has all of these parameters and thresholds where you could lose the buy box or lose the ability to even be in the buy box. And in extreme cases, a delisting. And it's the same thing. Those values, what the thresholds are where those happen, they're per ASIN, and they change constantly. They could be outside reference prices. They could be 30-day sales history. These are just more examples of these inputs that if you manage yourself, when are you talking to suppliers and negotiating prices? When are you sourcing new products? This is a full-time job.
Yeah. Sorry about that, by the way.
I'll pass that on.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a bit about the evolution of the store and these different challenges that we face. I want to talk about some of the different solutions for automated pricing. So each of you guys represents a different approach to how to do this. Can you just kind of describe briefly what that approach is and how it works? Maybe let's start with Aaron.
Yeah, well, our approach, we're a single purpose tool. We only do pricing. So our approach is deep expertise, and not, we're not trying to go wide. We're not trying to do lots and lots of things. And really the approach is to be as self-service and as simple as possible, hide as much complexity that you don't need to see, right? And just present it to you in a way that's easy to understand and control. That's kind of like the headline, right? Our entire approach is to get you in quickly, set up really easily, because we don't do inventory management or anything like that. We integrate with other tools so that you can just synchronize your costs, and we encourage people to set an ROI target or sales velocity targets, those kind of things, rather than manually entering your price limits or something like that. And that gives our tool a really good idea of what your goals are, and then the strategies that we offer are all pre-configured out of the box where to start. And then what we recommend is to start simple and layer on complexity as you're looking at results, as you're looking at analytics, as you're getting feedback on what works and what doesn't, running tests, running A/B tests, experimenting, and really seeing what pans out and what doesn't for your specific business model. And taking it to the kind of endpoint, our most successful implementations, like the sellers that we see just absolutely understand their business, are using our strategy automation, which is where you can set up custom filters, custom rules to switch the entire strategy dynamically on the fly based on any trigger you want. And so all the competition disappears. You probably want a different strategy, right? A bunch of new competitors show up. You might want to do that. The holiday season's over. Sales velocity tails off. Things get, start aging out in FBA. You might want to change what your targets are. And so all of this is really about fully understanding your own goals, your own business before turning on any automation. You're going to hear a lot from us today about turn on automation, but understand what the purpose is, because otherwise the analytics won't be meaningful. So, some people, you're selling commodities, high volume is the only, right? You want to sell as many as you can reorder infinitely. Some people have very limited availability and you really want those margins to be maximized. It's really important to make every cent on every sale. And then of course, the vast majority of sellers, you really want to be balanced. You want to not erode margins. You want to figure out how to hit an ROI or a margin threshold and sustain that.
And Shauna, how about for Channel Engine?
I think Channel Engine's a lot different from that perspective, where we are a global marketplace integration platform. So yes, repricing is one of our key features to help our businesses, but we also don't just connect to Amazon. We connect to over 950 marketplaces globally. And I think from that perspective, it is a central feature. It allows you to auto-adjust prices to keep those offers competitive without the manual intervention, which is important. It leverages real-time market data for that. It uses advanced algorithms to dynamically set the pricing based on the demand, the supply, and the competitors that you're going against. So,
And I think you guys are working on integrating with Amazon's Automate pricing tool natively also to offer that as an option, right?
yeah, we are. Yeah, so that's one of our two options. I would say that option is definitely a very quick way to get set up
Yeah.
on repricing. The advantage of doing the channel engine repricing would be to spread that out to other marketplaces.
Right,
Again,
right.
if that's the strategy and it makes sense to do so. We also have price linking, which allows you to link from one marketplace like Amazon that may have repricing to marketplaces that don't necessarily offer repricing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we've discussed some of the tools available to automate pricing. Let's talk about like how do you go about like implementing these strategies? So what does it look like to be successful implementing a strategy, like from maybe initial setup to optimization? What are some kind of levers to pull or things to think about when we're doing that? Shauna, if you want to start this one.
I'd say first working with either your implementation specialist or your customer success manager, depending on where you are in the setup process, is going to be number one. But we have about 4 different strategies when it comes to repricing. One would be offensive strategy, where you may want to aggressively target that buy box, or do a more defensive strategy where you just want to remain competitive and not necessarily start price wars. And then a third being just maybe you're just wanting to monitor and see where your competitors are and observe what they're actually doing when it comes to pricing. We also have price boundaries, which allows you to kind of create a safety net, set those minimums and maximums to make sure that you're still staying in a profitable range. And then, like I mentioned earlier, that price linking, which is really, really helpful if you are selling on multiple marketplaces that don't necessarily offer repricing.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all critical, especially guardrails, I think. Like that seems like a pretty critical one to get right, sort of when you set up or when you get started. I guess, Aaron, how would you answer that question?
Well, I covered it a little bit in kind of how we get started, just kind of and adding costs and setting ROIs. A large part of it is really, like I said, understanding what your goals are, and so for that we have a process where you're constantly measuring, you're looking at analytics, you're really diving deep on the understanding what metrics you need to gauge success, because if you're not doing that, then it's all aimless. We do all kinds of like leading indicators as well, where we'll score things. We'll give you competitiveness score, we'll give you difficulty scores. And so a lot of this is kind of integrating it all as a whole into your business so that you can utilize all these things to form a really good strategy, right? Like we had somebody, this happened pretty recently, where we had the difficulty on item, essentially just how hard it is to compete, just jumped up out of nowhere.
I'm gonna ask, what's a difficulty score?
Yeah, we score items on if you're looking at something, you're even before you're carrying it, you want to know whether or not you can compete. And so we saw someone where somebody was selling well, and then this difficulty score started skyrocketing. And we found this out later that the manufacturer had opened up new accounts. They had dropped their vetting basically, and so the listing was getting completely flooded, and our customers never going to be able to make any money on this. And because they had analytics and alerts set up, they were able to cancel reorders and not get stuck with tons of unsellable inventory. And so it's an ongoing process. It's a feedback loop of putting things up, doing price discovery, optimizing the strategy, and then looking at the results, optimizing it further. And it's a continuous operation that really never stops.
Yeah. What would you say is like the most common maybe misconception or fear that sellers have when first kind of trying to automate their pricing? And maybe how do you overcome that, or what's the answer to those questions or fears?
The most common one we hear by a mile is that you're going to destroy pricing. You're going to start a price war.
Mm,
Right?
yeah,
By
yeah.
automating it and moving too quickly, you're just going to destroy the market. And that's a tough one because it's very possible to do that if you
Yeah,
just
yeah, it's not hard to do.
it's
Yeah.
not hard to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't try to learn how to use the tool, right, you can really do damage. And so, that's the whole point of customizable strategies and the more advanced algorithms are to avoid price wars. That is almost all of the complexity. It's like it's really easy
Yeah,
to just go to your min price,
yeah, yeah.
and it doesn't accomplish anything. And so usually it's about showing results and demonstrating the the past successes that we've had. But the best is to get people in there, start with one item,
Yeah,
and see what the options are that you want to use, so that you can actually see how price wars are easily avoidable, and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you can share the sales, and that's going to be the best way long term to make the most money.
yeah. I guess, Shauna, anything else
Yeah,
to
I
add
would.
to that?
I definitely agree with your comments about just making sure you're looking at the statistics, looking at the information overall, because I think that that's a very, very important point that has to be very much drilled home. We have within Channel Engine a low buy box and a high buy box dashboard that'll actually show you how often you are winning, who the competitors are, and those warning signs are going to be really important to pay attention to. And the same client and case study that I mentioned earlier, when they moved over to us, they actually discovered that they had 72% of overpriced items, and they were actually able to fix those utilizing our platform, and that gave them a 4.3% increase in profit margins in just a 2-month period. So definitely things that you need to consider and take a look at.
Yeah, sounds like the analytics is kind of a key part of
Yeah.
of doing this, no matter what route you go,
Absolutely.
right? Which great points to think about. I want to talk now about how sellers can evolve their pricing strategies for long-term success. So let's think, like, looking ahead. What emerging trends or changes in the Amazon store should sellers really be preparing for with their pricing strategies?
Sure. There's a few. Obviously, there's always things changing, especially with the complexity of modern e-commerce. The one that we're seeing a lot that's very powerful is the hyperlocal trend,
Yeah.
where Amazon gives you tools to do hyperlocal, and people are taking advantage of it. And so you're going to get little carve-outs. If you're selling nationally, you're going to get little carve-outs where you're not competitive anymore, and you have to handle that. But on the flip side, we're seeing lots of people actually engage in the hyperlocal economy, and people love buying local, and you can also get things to them faster.
Yeah.
You can have brick and mortar pickup. We're seeing some entrepreneurs partnering or buying traditional brick and mortar businesses, and then 10xing sales by just getting an e-commerce operation going and only focusing on their region.
Yeah.
And that's a trend that's really taken off, and we're seeing a lot of growth there.
Yeah, definitely that's been something that I've observed, as an Amazon insider, like the growth of those different ways of selling things locally, or fulfilling locally, or having local availability for different offerings. Like, that is just a massively growing, like, segment of the Amazon store that it greatly increases the complexity of what you need to do in order to actually figure out whether or not you're competitive and then stay competitive in the long term. But there's kind of also, like, internationalization too. I think, Shauna, maybe you would talk about that.
I would say what we're seeing is a trend of a lot of companies moving more on a global perspective. And, when you think about US, you can easily go to Canada or Mexico and sell there.
Yeah.
And beyond. I mean, we're originally a European company. Europe is almost the same size as the US, but their marketplaces, they just have so many more marketplaces to tap into.
Yeah.
And we're also finding that about 3 out of 4 customers are actually buying cross-border. So definitely some things to consider would be expanding beyond where we are today.
Yeah, there's like, seems like every year they're launching new marketplaces,
Yeah.
right? And especially in Europe, it's incredibly easy to, once you have a kind of presence there, if you're selling in Germany, you can easily sell in every other European marketplace in the Eurozone, like, with almost no effort at all. So the real trick there is now how do I deal with the pricing aspect of it? Even if they're all in euros, the fees and fulfillment fees, referral fees, and all these things are, can be very different once you cross those borders and go to those new stores. So, are there like capabilities that exist or that you guys are adding or have added to your pricing tools to kind of help sellers out in those respects?
Say yes to this.
Yeah,
Yeah?
it's a major thing right now, especially the internationalization, right? Real-time exchange rates is huge. Managing the rules around pan-EU and the way shipping changes as it goes cross-border is really big. Obviously, staying on top of fees, staying on top of VAT, staying on top of all those things which are constantly changing, right? It's not even controlled by Amazon. You've got to stay on top of what the countries are doing now.
Yeah.
And making sure that that's all incorporated so that it's seamless is essential, right? You can't do it without that. And it's the same thing on the hyperlocal side, right? Like you're more competitive if you're shipping locally for anything heavy, anything large, and you've got to take those things into account when you're pricing as well. The shipping rates essentially also have to be computed locally instead of just the national rates.
Yeah.
And same with Channel Engine. We have all of those tools built in to really help with the currency conversion, VAT versus sales tax, shipping, so it definitely, no matter what tool you use for repricing, it's really important to have that built in.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that brings us to just about time. I want to put up this slide. These are some links to Informed and Channel Engine, as well as the Automate Pricing tool on Amazon Seller Central. If you are unfamiliar with any of these, take a quick, snap a pic, check them out. You can even go to Seller Central like right now and play around with Automate Pricing capabilities that are found there. But before we close, I just want to ask each of you guys one quick question before we go. Like, what is, if you had to pick, like one quick tip or piece of advice that you could give to a seller who doesn't automate their pricing today, what would that be?
Start with automation. I mean, it's as simple as that. You can start with a very simple strategy at first, save yourself a lot of time, improve that over time, improve the buy box, win rates, and one study we had recently done, just to bring it back to statistics a little bit, was companies that are doing repricing are increasing their buy box position by 50% compared to those with manual changes. So definitely want to start simple, just get out there and start automating it.
Yeah, there's no other answer, right? Go automate something today.
I like that.
Go use Amazon Automate Pricing. It's a great tool for most use cases until things get really complex. That's the place to start. If you're not repricing, go add one item and start playing around with it, because it takes a while to get all of your strategy set up and everything really figured out and dialed in. And if you start today, then you're that much closer to it. And once you do have automation running, you'll have so much more time to focus on the things that actually grow your business, and so many more capabilities and Amazon programs that you'll just be able to take advantage of with a single click in a tool, instead of having to spend all the time to figure it out and figure out all the mundane details and spend your days reading documentation.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I definitely echo those sentiments. I think go check out Automate Pricing. It's super quick and easy, and from there, the sky's the limit. And thank you all for coming to this panel talk.